Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Board Games Hitting My Table. This is where I talk about all of the games that I have been playing over the last couple of weeks. This episode covering the first half of November 2024, and I have quite a mixed bag as usual. Now, before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. And let's start with the big daddy of the bunch. This is the El Grande Big Box. We played a 4-player game of this one, and regular viewers of my channel might know that this is my number one game, or it has been my number one game for the last quite a few years now, probably 5 years or so. So will it maintain its top spot this year? You'll have to stay tuned to my top 100, which is currently ongoing. But this was, again, another fantastic experience. I introduced this one to my girlfriend for the first time, and it was quite nice to see that she enjoyed it as much as we did, despite her not really dipping her toe into Eurogames yet. So a really cool back and forth. Some different strategies going on. It was quite a weird play that managed to just swing me the victory in this one, because if you know El Grande, there are lots of fancy and more complex cards, but the one that scored me quite a few points was simply scoring a particular zone several times, and I managed to score my home region, so I got a few more points that way. I think I had a 5-point region, so it was I think 3 intakes of 7 points, just to give me a 21-point gap before the first scoring. And for the rest of the game, there was a small bridge of the gap in terms of scoring, but that was just enough to get me the win. But still, one of the best times, if not the best game of all time. Again, you'll have to stay tuned to my top 100 to see if this one keeps its place. Talking about fantastic games, we played a 3-player game of Concordia. For the second time, we used the Crete map. So I think the first time I played the Crete map, we played it at 2 players. The second time, we used it at actually 3 players. And if you're aware with the expansion content, Crete is known to be particularly tight. And this map was just, so restrictive. Not like I disliked it at all, but I did have a bit of a game from hell where nothing really seemed to be going my way. And whenever I saved up enough resources for a card, that card would be taken. Always one resource short of doing this or that. So it was quite a frustrating game, but still no slight on the actual game design at all. It's one of the best games ever made, in my opinion. Yeah, it was just one of those days for me. So yeah, always great to get Concordia back to the table. I think strategy-wise, I did try to focus on the Saturn cards by getting into all the different regions. I picked up quite a few of those, but I did miss out on a couple of regions simply because my mobility was so low. Because I was failing to get new units onto the map to make me more mobile. And that really did cost me in the end, and my opponents got a huge jump on me for that reason. They were much more mobile, much more flexible, and did a hell of a lot better than I did. But still, love the game. Again, how well will it do this year? Stay tuned. On to a couple of smaller games now. We played a 3-player game of Astral. So this one has already appeared on my top 100 this year. Always kind of around that bottom of the list, but it's still such a lovely set collection style game where you're managing your hand with the cards you're playing into your tableau. A good back and forth, nice flow to the game, and still one of my favourite set collection games for sure. We played a game of High Score just to finish off a games night after playing more intense games. This one, simple Knizia dice rolling game, trying to get basically points based on different scoring cards. Pure luck fest, but it's fun for what it is, as light as it gets. Very similar to a game I've talked about recently called Gang of Dice. I think that game's probably a little bit more interesting, but this one is that little bit more approachable. So that is High Score. Another smaller game that recently featured on a ranking video is Kabanga. So after my first play of this one, I liked it, but I thought, yeah, you're kind of just rolling with the punches, seeing how it goes. And that is the case. But the more I'm playing this one, the more its charm is starting to come to the forefront of the experience. This is I think it's going to be a bit of a sleeper hit, really. I think there's going to be a hidden audience for this one, where you are playing these numbered cards on the matching colours, And then, because there are 2 numbers in each suit, basically, or each type of available at any time, anybody who has a card in their hand between those 2 numbers can shed those cards from your hand. So you're always involved at all times. And we had an excellent game. We played a 3-player game, and it came right down to the wire. And one of my opponents was right on the brink of losing, and they managed to win several rounds on the bounce to really bridge that gap. But still, a lot of fun. Again, the game kind of plays you, but there is a little bit of memory aspect if you want to gamify it, and you can try and game it if you want to, but still, it's a lovely experience. And I think a lot of people would like this one, like family weight gamers or people who play with kids can get a lot of joy from Kabanga. We played a 3-player game of The Lost Code, which has pretty quickly become my favourite deduction game. A classic Leo Colavini design, a reprint of a game called Think Straight, which was notorious for its poor production values. This one of the production is obviously much better with this new game from new version from Mojito Studios. It's quite a simple deduction game where you are trying to figure out the numbers on these plaques in front of you, which you can't see, but your opponents can. And what you're doing is you are trying to work out what everybody else has, because you can see their numbers, to deduce what you could possibly have. But at the same time, you are trying to use these dials to guess the kind of parameter on what you think the total value of a particular arrangement of those numbers could be through this dice rolling system. It's so simple. Again, just simply roll the dice, which is going to determine which things are going to be guessed. Use the dial that you want and then see how well you do. If you're correct, then you'll get a certain amount of points depending on how narrow of a dial you'll use. So for example, if you have a broad area, say, 6 or 7 numbers it could be, then you only score like a point or 2. But if you narrow it right down to one single number, then you'll get like a massive 8 points. But of course, deducing that can be quite difficult. So we had lovely turn structure. It came again, very close game actually. It's quite interesting how the end game and the in-game points kind of balanced off of each other, because I think I did quite well during the game, but one of my opponents did really well at the end of the game, and I didn't do so well in that regard. But still, lovely one, and it's becoming one of those games that I would never really turn down, and I think it's going to surprise you a bit to see how well this one has done in my rankings this year. Back to the classic Euros now. We played a 3-player game of Zulan, the Mayan calendar. So actually one of the first Euro games that I ever played. Kept its place in my collection after all of these years, and rightly so, because this is a fantastic worker placement game and one of the best of its genre. I wanted to play this game in a different strategy than I usually do, because normally I go for this crystal skull mechanism as my main strategy, where you're collecting skulls and depositing them on these different locations to climb tracks and also to score a big chunk of points, is kind of a short-term tactical choice rather than longer-term thinking. This game, I thought, let's ignore this part. Let's really focus on the tracks and getting technologies. I did a lot of that, and it did start to pay off. But those original larger chunks of change when it comes to the points did come back and haunt me when my opponents were getting those and I wasn't. So that really did hurt me quite a bit. I also used the prophecy expansion, which kind of restricts you in certain rounds, and that again come back to haunt me because I ended up having skulls at certain times, and having skulls would cost you negative points. So yeah, it was a bit of a cluster, but still, I like the ways you can approach this game. Again, you probably need to do a bit of each, which I've definitely learned the hard way, but still really nice to get this one back to the table after so many years. So that is Zulan, the Mayan calendar. Another small game now. We played a quick game of 6 Nimmt just at the end of that 4-player session. And we also had a session of 6-player games, because we had a bit of a party night, really. And we got the Sheriff of Nottingham back to the table. This is kind of one of our go-to games when we have the 6 of us. A nice bluffing game where you're trying to smuggle goods through in these pouches. We've kind of built up a bit of a meta game with this one over the years. It was a lot of fun. I think maybe we played one round too many, because the game does suggest only playing a turnaround with everybody as the sheriff wants. We did that twice, which meant that the pool of cards was really diluted, and there were so many contrabands in play that everyone was pretty much just smuggling those through. But there were some really interesting and funny turns, as people would flat out lie to you and smuggle 5 contraband at once and so on. So yeah, this is a really good bluffing game. Maybe I've called on it a bit over the years, but still, for the right night, it can be a lot of fun. That is Sheriff of Nottingham. A couple more party games. We played Fiesta de los Muertos. This one's pretty unknown. It's a kind of a word association style game where you get some fictional character. You'll write a word that links to it. You'll pass that along as a kind of telephone mechanism, and everybody will try to work out what the final clues are and who that associates with. Actually went down quite well. And more importantly, we played some Telestration, so the best party game out there, up there with Wits and Wages for me. This one, as usual, it starts to become pure smut as you start to draw more and more lewd images, but still, it's a lot of fun, and always guaranteed a good time with Telestrations. And we also played a few sessions of One Night Ultimate Werewolf to finish off that party night. The only other game that I played that I haven't got here is that we played a 3-player game of Big Top, a small little bidding style game that's actually continued to impress me. The more I play this one, the more I actually like it. And what I like most about it is that there are some actual unique mechanisms which you don't see often. For example, in this one, when you bid certain numbers based on these cards that you're trying to score, then those bids or your score cards will populate based on the bids you've made. So you're actually incentivized sometimes to bid higher so that you can complete existing cards you've collected. I think that's a really cool idea. I think I did surprisingly well on this one without really, concentrating too much. Managed to get quite a few more expensive cards or more points-rich cards without paying too much for them, which is obviously a good path to victory there. But still, like this one, it kind of reminds me of that niche of games like High Society and so on. But this is a good example of the genre. So that is a Big Top. So that's it, really. That's all of the games that I have been playing. Again, the big features being Concordia, El Grande, and Zulkan the Mayan calendar, but also nice to get some party games back to the table after so much time of usually playing with 3 or 4 players. Also getting the lost code back was a lovely touch. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other content too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.